Hi everyone, this is Brian Hayes, and welcome to the second in our series on how to play the very high altissimo notes on the alto saxophone. Today we're going to take our range up another 2 semitones, up to high G sharp and high A above high C. As in the first tutorial, we're going to use the fingerings out of the Jimmy Dorsey saxophone method, which was published around 1939 or 1940. These fingerings have definitely stood the test of time, and my experience is on all the different brands of saxophones, the fingerings in the Jimmy Dorsey book for the alto saxophone produce the most in tune and focused of the altissimo fingerings that I've tried. Remember, the fingerings for the altissimo notes really are only half the story. It relies on our sense of pitch, our ability to hear the note we want to play in our head, in our mind's ear, and definitely it also relies on the strength of our embouchure. So my normal disclaimer, if you haven't completed the work in volume 1 of this series, and if you can't do the exercise prescribed in building embouchure strength for wind instrument players, for at least 60 seconds, preferably 90 seconds to attempt these notes, you really shouldn't move ahead in trying to play higher on the alto sax until you've mastered those prerequisite tasks. Now, you'll recall from volume 1 in this series that G over high C is played by having the octave key on our left hand, our first and third fingers on the left hand, our first and third fingers on the right hand, and then the side A sharp trill key, the bottom of the 3 side keys on the saxophone engaged on the right hand. So high G is the octave key, first and third on the left hand, first and third on the right, and the side A sharp key. That gives us high G. G sharp is identical, however, what we've got to do now, instead of putting the side A sharp key on the bottom of the 3 side keys on the right hand, we have to move up and put the middle of those side keys on. So the fingering is identical to high G, 1 and 3 on both hands, but we've got to hit the middle of the 3 side keys to play high G sharp, or high A flat is its alternate name. Now high A is played by having, as I've got here now, the octave key on, fingers 2 and 3 only on the left hand, and fingers 1, 2 and 3 on the right. So that's high A. So let's just go over those 2 new fingerings again. High A flat or G sharp is octave key, 1 and 3 on both hands, and the middle of the 3 side keys, the B to C trill key on the right hand side of the saxophone. A then is all of the fingers on the right hand, 1, 2 and 3, but only 1 and 2 on the left, plus the octave key. As discussed in the volume 1 tutorial, it's absolutely critical that as you learn new altissimo note fingerings and the ability to produce those very high notes, it's really critical that you immediately incorporate those notes into melodic phrases, scales and arpeggios, and just make them part of your normal playing register rather than some sort of freak show where you occasionally may or may not be able to hit those notes as a bit of a squeaky, squealy showman sort of feature. That's not in the long run going to be of much use to you as a musician. So what we're going to do here tonight is I'm going to play the G that we learnt in volume 1 combined with the G sharp and the A fingerings that I've just shown you, and I'm going to play that across 3 octaves. So I'm going to play low G, G sharp to A, middle G, G sharp to A, and then altissimo G, and look at my hands there, so 1, 3, 1, 3, side A sharp plus the octave key. So altissimo G, G sharp, the only change is you can see I've moved my wrist up to let my index finger hit the second of the 3 side keys, that's high G sharp, and then A. So the first finger has to come up, the second and third finger are down on the left hand, all the fingers are down on the right, and we're not touching any of the side keys. So just one more time. So the normal G, G sharp to A fingering that I'm playing there at the moment, that you will be familiar with, this. Okay, and then we put the octave key on. Then we leave the octave key on and we play the G altissimo fingering, the G sharp fingering, and the A fingering. So let's piece those high notes together now as part of a 3-octave melody. Okay, and that's what I want you to work on as far as your high notes on the saxophone. Make sure that you can incorporate the new notes into obvious melodies. In that case there, that's a great way to practice your new high notes. Play a melody 2 octaves below the altissimo range, then play it 1 octave below, and then play the same melody in tune with the same quality sound on your saxophone and the same ease of production. As we also learnt in Volume 1, it is advisable, if you're going to play a chromatic scale right up there into the altissimo range, to avoid traditional fingerings for notes like E and F, and even F sharp. On this saxophone this does have the high F sharp fingering, but if you need to play beyond high F sharp, the E fingering, the F fingering, and the F sharp fingering, as you can see, takes both of our hands away from the normal keyboard of the saxophone, and that's going to make it hard to link up with some of those tricky altissimo fingerings. So just the same way we did in Volume 1, I now want to take you through an A chromatic scale, a 2-octave A chromatic scale that's going to incorporate both of our new notes, G sharp and A up high, and obviously also G from Volume 1, if we're going to play all the 12 tones in a chromatic scale. But we're going to use those alternate fingerings once we get up to high E flat, beyond high E flat. So the A chromatic scale in the 2nd octave will be octave key on, A to A sharp, B to C. Notice I'm playing the side chromatic C fingering, which we discussed at length in the prior tutorials. C sharp, side D sharp. But instead of playing E like this, and you can see what happens once I do that, all of my fingers on my right hand now are more or less trapped, involved in pressing down this high E key. So I've lost communication with all of the keyboard by playing that E. So I want to avoid that E fingering if we're going to go up above the normal range of the saxophone. And if you remember in the Volume 1 tutorial, we discovered that there is an alternate way to play E where our fingers stay completely on the saxophone fingerboard. So if you're not sure of that, go over the Volume 1 tutorial, but look what I'm doing there. I'm playing high C, the auxiliary F fingering, and the G fingering. That gives me a good in tune and easy to produce high E. If I then lift up my G finger, I'm playing the standard auxiliary high F, which the saxophone was designed to play, so you'll get a very good in tune and good to produce high F. As we learnt in Volume 1, if we then put the A sharp key on, we get a in tune and usable high F sharp. It's nowhere near as good sounding as the full long-fingered F sharp, but look what it lets us do. If that's F sharp, our next note after F sharp in the chromatic scale is G. So if you look at my right hand, I've got my index finger exactly where I want it on the right hand to play altissimo G. All I have to do on the right hand is drop my index finger, leave the A sharp side key on, drop my finger on 1, my third finger down, and up here I have to change from auxiliary high F to 1 and 3. So alternate F sharp becomes altissimo G, then as we've learnt in today's session, G sharp is the same as G, but we just twist our wrist up and let us hit that inside the middle of the 3 right-hand side keys, and then the high A fingering. So let's take the A chromatic scale slowly up from low A, and we'll eventually end up with a full 2-octave A chromatic scale. So we'll start in our normal range. It's important when you're working on these notes in the early stages to break your exercises into the 2 distinct octaves that are now possible as you add these additional notes to your saxophone range. So traditionally, it's impossible to play a 2-octave A chromatic scale on the normal saxophone range that stops at either F or F sharp. However, in this session, you've learnt now the missing notes, the G sharp and the A, and the G from the Volume 1 tutorial that lets you complete the 2-octave chromatic scale. As I demonstrated a moment ago, I think it's good for your mind to hear the task that it has to duplicate up the new octave. In other words, stop at the halfway mark and then set off again. So your mind has heard, in that case, the low octave of the A chromatic scale, and your mind has to duplicate that same effect up 1 octave. Now obviously you do need to practice your chromatic scales non-stop, and eventually that's where you want to get to. But at the moment these notes are new to you and the whole concept is new to you. So give yourself a chance by breaking your exercise into the 2 parts. Now let's look at an A flat major scale. A flat is the key that has 4 flats in it. So B flat, E flat, A flat and D flat. So A flat major scale in the low octave would be A flat, B flat, and notice I'm putting my index finger over both the B key and the little bis key, the BIS key, that tiny little key that sits just below the B key. The combination of those 2 is the correct way to play B flat on a saxophone in all keys where B flat is not followed or preceded by B natural. You don't want to get into this caper of having to twist your index finger between B and B flat. So in the scale of A flat major, B flat will be followed by C and preceded by A flat. So there's no issue there of having to play B to B flat. So A flat, B flat, C, D flat, no fingers, E flat, F, G and A flat. So in the low octave, that will sound like this. Now what we want to do is take that major scale up 1 octave. All of the fingerings are the same until we get up to high E flat. So A flat octave key on, B flat C, D flat, E flat. Now as we've been doing in the chromatic scale, I recommend that you use the auxiliary high F, and that lets you then change quickly to the altissimo G and then finishing on the altissimo A flat. So just going through those fingerings of the A flat major scale one more time. A flat, B flat, C, D flat, E flat, auxiliary F, altissimo G, altissimo A flat. Now, just as we did with the A chromatic scale, I'm now going to play the A flat major scale through the 2 octaves, but I'm going to stop at the halfway mark and then reset off on the journey so that my mind has a clear picture of the scale and the sound that it wants to duplicate up 1 octave. So it'll sound like this. Now, to wrap up this tutorial, I want to take you through a 2-octave A major scale. We've just played the A flat major scale, but we've learnt tonight how to take our saxophone up to altissimo A. We've played an A chromatic scale, every possible note through 2 octaves up the saxophone to A above high C. We've played an A flat major scale, the key that has 4 flats in it. Let's finish by playing an A major scale up to altissimo A. Now A major is the key that has 3 sharps in it, F sharp, C sharp and G sharp. And I'm assuming you would probably be familiar with the A major scale in the low octave. If not, it's the normal A fingering, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp and A. Absolutely nothing new there. However, when we set off to take that scale up the next octave, again I recommend you use some alternate fingerings up high. A, B, C sharp and D, play as you would expect to play them. Obviously the D above high C sharp has to be played with the palm key on the left hand. Now, I would recommend that you then use, like we did in the chromatic scale, the auxiliary E fingering, same as we went through in the chromatic scale. Now after E we have to play F sharp, so I'd play that as we did in the chromatic scale, auxiliary F plus the side A sharp key. In a major scale, the next note after F sharp is G sharp. So we've got this quick change here where it's even a little trickier than going F sharp to G. We've got to go F sharp to G sharp. So I'll do that again. We've got auxiliary high F plus the bottom A sharp key on. When we go for the G sharp, we have to do that. At the same time as we drop our fingers on the left hand, we have to engage the middle of the 3 right hand side keys. Once we've got the G sharp, it's the same as in the chromatic scale. We change to the A like that. So piecing that together now in the 2 octave A major scale. I hope you've enjoyed working your way right up to the altissimo A on the alto saxophone. If used in a musical context, the extended range of the saxophone is a fantastic feature of your playing to be proud of. As always, keep in touch via my website, www.brianhayes.biz, that's B-I-Z. Subscribe to my YouTube channel and drop me an email if you have any fundamental questions about the altissimo register on the alto saxophone. Bye for now.